Hi everyone, it's Kim from Eclectic Paperie here today to share a project using Catherine Scanlon stamps. And we're going to be I'm going to show you how to make a mini album, and we're going to talk about Catherine stamps, some art anthology sprays, stencils, all kinds of fun stuff. So let's get started with the project. So what I'm starting with, I am using the Strathmore Mixed Media paper. This stuff is amazing. Very heavyweight paper, 140 pound. It's a wonderful paper for inks, paints, because it holds up really well to water. So what I did to start was I picked three stencils that I wanted to use on my project for doing a gesso resist technique. And if you've seen one of my other videos, you know how to do that, but I'm going to walk you through doing that. Because the gesso will resist any kind of ink. I'm using Claudine Hellmuth gesso, but you could use Liquitex as well, or anything that you like. I am using, as you can tell, one of my favorite stencils. This is the, I completely forget the name of it. It's an alpha stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. So what I'm taking is a paintbrush, and I'm going to keep it fairly dry because I don't want the gesso to seep underneath the stencil. And I'm going to start with just a little bit of the gesso, and I'm going to very quickly just wash it over my stencil here. And I'm not going everywhere because I don't want a solid background. And I don't care if it's a little rough looking underneath. I prefer that look anyway. And I don't know if you can see that because we have white on white, but you have the gesso there, and doing it in a thin layer also will enable it to dry fairly quickly. And of course, through the magic of Hollywood, I have a piece that is already dry and ready to go. If you can see that there. I don't know if you can see that or not. And yes, my paper's a little dirty on this side, and you know what? I don't care. I like it. So we're going to use some art anthology spray. And if you hadn't used these before, I would think of them as distress ink in a bottle. I love them. They react the way that distress ink does with water, and they mix really well. I love them. So I am using, on this page, I'm only going to be using Timeless, but I also used peacock feathers on my cover. I'm not going to use that on the inside pages. That's just for my cover. So I'm going to start by spraying my ink on here, and you'll see you get a fine mist. And we could leave it just like this if you want to. But I really want to get this ink to move around. So I'm going to wet it really well with water. And then you'll start to see that I can get some good drips in here. And I'm going to kind of let that go off my page. I can wet it a little bit more if I want to. Oh, I love that. See, I like to get all those drips and the runs. And then you will see when this dries that just like a distress ink, I can dry this and then come back in and pick up all the rest of this ink, and I'll get these nice little splots. So I'm going to do that because I have one of those really loud heat guns, and I don't want to kill your ears. That's all right. I'm going to torture you through it so you can see what this looks like. Hang in there. Ooh! So you can see that a little bit, and you can start to see how the gesso is resisting the ink. I'm going to finish drying this and picking up some more ink, and I'll be right back. Okay, my page is dry now, and you can really see how much more I was able to pick up. And you pick up some of those wet drops, and then you dry it, and you can pick up some more And I love the look, but to me it's very much like a distress ink, and this will re-wet. If you put water on here again, it will remove color. So it reminds me of distress ink. The colors are really soft, very pretty. This is a great product. So you can see that my gesso here has resisted the ink. This is the other side of the paper that I've already done and actually added some stenciling to. So now we're gonna add some stencils. So one of the things that I've been working on, because mixed media is new to me along with stencils, is one of my struggles has been keeping it simple. I can't decide which stencil. I've got 17 of them, and I end up adding all these designs and all these different colors, and what I end up with is a big hot mess. So I actually took a Dina Wakley class a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that we talked about in the class was color and trying to not make mud, which I have done far too many times. And one of the things that I liked that we ended up talking about was not trying to keep like colors together. Not that you have to always have that, because you can have a contrast which works really well. But what I found and what I did with this project was I said to myself, all right, okay, Kim, you can have 3 stencils and you can have 3 colors, and that's it. And what I found was a project that came together much better, much more simply. Even in some of the coloring that I did, I just kept it to 3 basic colors, this kind of teal color and the yellow. So when I was working on my teal page, I made sure that I kept blues together in the different inks, and I'll show you that in a minute. And so now I have this yellow page, and this is a stencil from Wendy Vecchi, and I'm going to use scattered straw because it's very similar in color to the ink color that I have. I'm using my blending tool, and I'm just going to add some of these random swirls. I love these. They're so pretty. And so you'll see when I keep the colors in the same color family, I'm not getting mud, and you end up with a very subtle mark on your page, not something so dramatic. And then if I want to come in with a contrasting color, that's just, even here in the teal you can see a little bit, that's your little bit of pop, but not your big overwhelming, take over your page. And Dina was really helpful in helping to talk about colors and ones that work together, and the color wheel and all that kind of fun stuff that is all very new to me. And so one of the things that I found the most helpful was her idea of just stay within the same color family initially, and then if you want to add that pop, you can certainly go back in and do that. And then you can always reference, if you have a color wheel, it's a very helpful tool, because then you can see, well, what is the opposite of yellow? What's the opposite of red, or whatever color that you like or that you're drawn to. So I'm going to add a few of those in, these little swirly leafy things. And then the other thing that's always good to have is a neutral. I like neutrals. Brown is a big favorite of mine. Black is always a very good neutral. I decided to use a, what did I use? I think I used a brown. Yes, and a pumice stone. So let me get that as my second color and my second stencil, which is tiny circles. I love this one. So here's the fun thing about tiny circles. You can put the entire stencil down, and because pumice is I guess it's kind of dark, but I'm being fairly soft in my application, and I'm really being very random. So you see how you just kind of get this very soft, you can kind of see the circles in the background. It's not too overwhelming. I'm trying to just keep it simple. You know that saying, keep it simple, sweetheart. Or sometimes we always say keep it, for me, maybe not so smart. It's hard to learn. It's a learning experience. So I did that. That's it. That's all I have going on. I've got my background with my gesso resist, my little swirls, and my tiny circles. And then, of course, no project is complete without inking up the edges with some gathered twigs, because you have to do that. You may say to yourself, this looks perfect, don't put brown on there, it won't work. Yes, it will. Don't ask me why it works, but it works. You have to ink the edges. Look at, see? Doesn't it look so much better when you do that? I know. You have to add that in. So we'll see what that looks like. We'll do the difference there. It just adds a little bit of depth to the color, I think. So I'm going to finish up this page, and then we're going to move on to using Catherine's stamps. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back to get stamping, but before we do that, I just want to mention that I was using the 11 by 14 Strathmore mixed media paper, and I just cut the page in half, and that's how I came up with the album size. So I just wanted to mention that. So the stamps that I'm using today are going to be Black-Eyed Susans, Good Advice, and then I did pull out the Twinchies. I don't know if that's going to end up in my album or not, but I wanted to show you that design, show you what they look like and what they look like colored. The Twinchies they're individual stamps, 4 individual stamps, and she has a 1, 2, and 3 in the series. I really like these, and this is a real favorite design of mine for cards, and I think it would look great in a scrapbook album or even a mini album like this, as well as an accent. And I'll show you those. I've colored a couple of those up and cut them out. So you could keep them together, use them individually, and again, staying with my color theme of my teal and my yellow, and my red is my little bit of a pop color there. So we'll see if those end up in the final project, but I wanted to bring those to your attention. The stamp that we're going to look at right now is the Black-Eyed Susans. These are produced by Art Gone Wild, Stampers Anonymous, same company. And these are cling stamps. What I kind of like about this one, the larger stamps here, is it's on this piece of plastic already, and I pretty much used it just as a block. I'm going to be using, I colored my image with Copic markers, which are still one of my favorite tools for blending. They do such a great job. You do not want to use archival ink when you are working with Copics, because even if you heat set archival ink, it tends to smudge and run. So you really want to use Memento ink with Copics. It's a perfect ink. It dries quickly, and it does not, the Copics do not react with it. So I ended up cutting out my flowers, and I'm not going to take you through my whole process of coloring, but I just wanted to share a quick little shading technique. Very simple. I am Copic certified, but I would not say I'm an expert at using Copic markers. Don't mind my mess here, because I actually ended up cutting this entire image out to mount on the front of my album. So what I am using are Y11 and Y15. Probably Copic, if you went for training, they'd probably tell you to use 3 colors. I would not say I'm an expert at doing that, and I find that I usually pull out the 3 that go together, but I typically end up using the lighter and the darker together. And I can especially do this on this project just because this is a very pale color. But I begin by coloring in with my lightest color. And again, I'm not going to do all of this while you are watching, because you would get really bored. I don't do all the petals because I don't want the ink to be completely dry. And then I'm going to add some of the darker highlight up here at the base of the flower where the petals start. I'm going to push down fairly hard on the nib of the marker and kind of flick it forward. And you see you get some nice shading there. If I want a little bit of blending, I can come back in with the other color, the lighter color again, and work that back in. And then when that is completely dry, you have some nice shading there. It's very basic. It works for me for now. You can see the end result here. So this was my completed Black-Eyed Susans stamp from Catherine Scanlon. She's the one who designed it. And I colored the whole thing in with Copic markers, and then I cut it out and attached it with foam tape to the front of my album. So I am going to finish up my page, probably talk a few more things about the inside, and then we're going to talk about binding a book like this together, a handmade book. Oh, I know one other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was the Good Advice stamps, also designed by Catherine. I love these. They're some great sentiments. You get 4 in a pack. They have little frames around them if you like that. It looks like this when it's stamped. But I find that sometimes I could put this here, but I feel like for me my page is unbalanced and I really need something up at the top of the page that comes down. So very often for me, to make a sentiment fit in the space that I have, I will cut apart the sentiment so that I can separate the words and it fills up a larger space, and I like that look quite a bit. So I just wanted to mention that as a tip as well. So I'm going to get my book together and come on back and we'll talk about binding everything together and finishing it up. Hi there, I'm back to finish up our book. I do have everything finished, and I will show that to you after we finish binding everything together. But I wanted to take you through a very simple binding technique. I don't know much about book binding at all, but I did this in a Diane Reefley class, and it's very simple. It kind of might take a minute to get the hang of it, so hopefully you'll be able to see this okay on the video. But if you don't understand it, you can do a search for a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. That's what this is, and that's what we'll be using in the book today. So to start, I used a craft pick and just you can use a mouse pad or one of these little foam things to poke 5 holes in the middle of my book, right on my score line, where it's folded in half. And I did make them a little bit bigger because I was initially using a larger thread and found that it didn't work very well. So my recommendation for a thread is, this is a wax-covered thread, which will go through the pages easily and it'll hold up well. And I did actually get a binder's needle. You don't need this, you can do it by hand, but I was at my local store today and they had, she had binder's needles, and I thought, sounds good to me. It has not a real sharp end to it, and it'll be easier to get through the holes. So let's get started. You can start this from the inside of the book or the outside. I want my tassels, if I'm going to put a tassel, or my tie to be on the outside. I don't want the knot on the inside, I want it on the outside. So I'm going to start on the outside. And I am going to go, starting from the back cover, I'm going to go up through the middle hole, through all of my pages. And we're going to leave a little bit of tail. A little bit of a tail in the back there, like that. That's enough. Then I'm going to go down through the hole, 1 hole over, and I'm going towards the top of my book. So from the inside through that hole, now I'm back on the back side. Then the very top hole, I'm going to go back up. See if I can get that all the way through there. Probably not. My holes are a little bit off. And this is kind of like sewing at this point. So there we go. Okay. Now I'm going to go back down through, I'm going to go move 1 hole down and go back down through that hole. So now you'll see, hopefully, keep this in the light here. Come on. Now I've got these nice stitches in here. Now from the back, I'm going to come down, and I'm not going to go in the middle hole. I'm going to go through this one right, heading towards the back. Sorry, I can't really, if you notice when you watch my videos, I can't work and talk at the same time. So the hole, I'm going to the hole, not the bottom one all the way down, but the second one. There we go. And of course then there we go. And then I'm going to go down in this very last hole, back down towards the back. All right, so can you see that? Hopefully you can see that. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to go back up from the back up 1 spot. again, and that's what's going to cover up what's going to give me this stitch. So basically you end up with a stitch going through every hole. You not just have one big one, but you end up with kind of 5 of them. And then I'm going to go back down through the middle. There we go. My book is bound, and this is where I will tie my strings together. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that off and then come back and show you my book. Okay, my book is complete. I'm very excited. This is the first time that I've made my own book just out of using some paper and binding it together, and it was really easy. So I encourage you to give it a try. So I wanted to show you just a few of the details on the inside. Again, we use the Art Anthology sprays on the outside, using a gesso resist technique and using stencils from Wendy Vecchi, the Crafters Workshop, and I think that was it. I think those were the only 2 companies that I used. This beautiful stamp design is from Catherine Scalin, as well as the sentiment on the outside, and I used Strathmore mixed media paper to create the book. I have this little stash of beads and that I added here too after my binding. I really like that. So on the inside here, I added, again, this is another Catherine Scalin design. This is from her Twinchies, one of her Twinchies set. And this is actually a piece of scrap paper that I had made months ago from another project, and I thought it went really well there. And I had these little cards, again, just in my stash. This is from Cosmo Cricket, a really old line, but all I did was come in and add some of my photos and some favorite little sentiment stamps that I have. A lot of them are from Tim Holtz. I really like his sentiment stamps. You can see I did sneak in another Wendy stencil here very lightly. I love the look of the words in the background. So I did a gesso resist on all of the pages. That's right, this is a stencil by Diane Reevely. This is one of her new ones from the Summer CHA show, The Leaves, which I really like. And I kept the pages fairly simple because there was so much going on in the background. Some of these stamps are they're fairly old. Technique Tuesday, Allie Edwards, I really like her sentiments that she uses as well, and I used a bunch of those. They're great for scrapbooking. So this is the middle of the book here. And again, cutting sentiments apart. This is from Tim Holtz, but I wanted to separate them out, so I did that. And this is from his, the number that I really like is from his Worn Text stamp set. I love that. Really nice. And this is from a stencil, You Are Here. That's from a Crafters Workshop stencil. And Be Fearless is actually from one of Tim's stamps, this big stamp here. But I only inked up the bottom part and just very carefully lined that up. Again, cutting this apart again to fill the space more. And there's the end of my book. Again, this was another piece of scrap from something that I did. Cutting apart more of the sentiments and just keeping the colors really simple. This was one of Catherine's Twinchies design, but I couldn't find space for the large square, but I really liked the flower, so I just cut the flower out and I used that. And then the back of the book, this is probably one of my favorite Wendy Vecchi stencils that she announced at the Summer CHA show. I love that. Isn't that fun? With the little barcode, I made this. I just think that's great. So I hope you enjoyed the video and the techniques that we talked about. Remember, today is the sale on the Catherine Scalin stamps, so go out there and grab yourself some stamps and some ink sprays and make your own book. Enjoy!